Hello everyone, I'm Colin Canet. Recently I've received some emails from some of my subscribers looking for some advice on some problems that they're having with some of their projects. So I thought, you know what, the best way to do this is I'll do a quick video on this so everybody can learn. So let's jump right in. Now, recently I've had a few comments or a few questions on how to get rid of swirl marks from a random orbital sander. And the quick answer to that is keep sanding with a lower grit, because there's no other way to get rid of those swirl marks. But what you want to do is to prevent them in the first place. And here's what the problem is in some cases, and that is starting off with a grit that is too coarse. Now, if you look at my sandpaper stack of all the grits that I use, you can see that 60 is at the bottom, and that's because I almost never use it. I almost always start off with 80, then go to 120 and 220. If you absolutely have to start off with a 60, the next thing you need to go to is 80, but sometimes a 60 will make such a course, will dig such deep lines in there that you can't even see them until you have put the final finish on. So it can be very challenging. So my advice is to prevent the swirls, try not to start with a 60, try and start with an 80 grit. It's not nearly as aggressive, and that should solve the problem for you. One of the problems that I have from time to time, and I still seem to have it, is cutting pockets for hinges. It seems that I sometimes find the wood, it comes apart on me because I'm not going in the right direction. And sometimes I'll get it too deep, like that one. I got a chunk that came off there because the grain is, and look at it, it's way too deep down there. And that happens from time to time. And sometimes you've got a pocket that you are putting another hinge in, you have to replace it, and the pocket is too low, or you gouge it somehow. I know I'm famous for doing that. The quick way of fixing that is to get a piece of veneer, and honestly, you can get veneers in various thicknesses, and a lot of this stuff you can just cut with, I'm just using tin snips here to cut that with, and you can cut that with a knife or with scissors, put that in there in a very quick way, and look, you can glue it with your carpenter's glue, but what I do is just put a little bit of CA glue in the bottom there, and then spritz the bottom with this and put that on, and it glues instantly, and then the hinge can go in there at the right depth, and it's already sealed and ready to go. It's a very quick way of fixing a pocket hole or a hinge pocket that has got too deep. And while I have my CA glue handy here, I had an email from somebody else who asked, when I'm using my dowel max, and I use mine a lot, and if you follow my channel, you'll know that I use this jig a lot. And what they asked was, when I'm doing a dry fit, every time I put the dowel in, sometimes it comes out in the other part that I'm fitting in, sometimes it stays in, and it's hard to fit. Well, there's a couple of things that you can do with that. I can't get that out of there. There it is. I have different lengths of dowels, and I've sanded them down a bit so they fit in and out, but they can still come out in the other part. But the other thing that you can do, and I've done this from time to time, you just use just a tab. You have to make very sure that you don't use too much glue, and just put a little bit of glue inside your hole, put a little bit of accelerator on, and when you put that in there, that will never come out. Now that is actually sealed in there, and I can use pliers and that dowel will break off before it'll come out of there. But that's a quick way of fastening that in there so that you can do dry fits and make sure that the pins stay where they're supposed to be. One of the things that has probably happened to most of us, certainly happens to me from time to time. For some reason, I'll get sometimes a little daub of glue. I don't know where it comes from. It'll just land on a board sometimes. And if you try and wipe it off, it often smears. But what I do, I always have a little container of utility blades, and they've never been used. They're usually very, very sharp, and the best thing to do is to just scrape that off, and you can keep scraping and use it like a little mini scraper, and that way you don't have to finish the whole board. You can just do that area, and I can actually see now, and you can actually see there's even a little bit of sawdust there that I'm getting, and I'm just scraping that one area, and that's actually come clean now. I could finish this, put stain or dye on there, and it would finish perfectly. But sometimes you'll get where you're actually in a corner where you glued some boards, and you'll get a little bit of squeeze out in the corner. You can do the same thing with this utility knife, and this board's going to move because it's not fastened, but so you can get in there like that and scrape along in that direction. And I'm doing it from the back here. I don't have a good vantage point. And then the same thing from there. And you can scrape that back and forth 2 or 3 times, and you can get all of that glue out, and all of that excess glue will come off, and it should finish up just perfectly. I even have a little utility knife that I made that holds these, so that if you need to get in right into the corner, it's much easier to do that with something like that. So great way of cleaning up little glue globs that land on your wood. Now, one of the questions I get asked on a fairly regular basis is, how do I fix dents in wood? And that's actually fairly easy, and there's a few different methods. Some people will say that if you use a damp cloth and an iron on low heat, you can use that with the heat, and the moisture will help swell that. But look, it's even easier than that, because if you take a little piece of plastic or even a little piece of metal and just put a tiny bit of water, just a couple of drops, like right in the middle of where that dent is. We all know as woodworkers that moisture makes the wood swell. So what happens if you just let that sit for a little while? That wood is going to swell, and in many cases it will swell to the point where it's sometimes even a little bit higher, but it depends how deep the dent is, and that will swell to it will swell and dry and be even with the wood, and all you'll have to do is give it a light sanding, and the little dent is all fixed. It's just that easy. Well, that concludes my video for today. Just a few ideas on fixing mistakes or even preventing them before they happen. I'm Colin Cadet for WoodWorkWeb. Thanks for watching.